From the runner who stole his world record in lane 8 to a man he never once saw compete, Michael Johnson has spent 25 years watching the fastest humans alive from a few feet away. At 58, the four-time Olympic champion has named the 5 athletes he rates above everyone else. Here they are, counting down. Number 5, Carl Lewis. Johnson was a teenager in Dallas when Lewis took over the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984. 4 gold medals at a single games. The 100 meters, the 200, the long jump, and the relay, all in the space of 8 days. Lewis then went a full decade without losing a long jump competition, 65 contests in a row, and won that same event at 4 consecutive Olympics before walking away from Atlanta in 1996 with 9 golds around his neck. The two men actually crossed paths on the track, and it did not go the way you might expect. In 1992, at the United States Olympic Trials in New Orleans, a young Michael Johnson ran 19:79 to beat Lewis in the 200 meters, and the great man failed to make the Olympic team in either sprint that year. 4 years later, standing in the Atlanta sunshine before the biggest race of his life, Johnson said out loud that track and field had produced only 2 household names, Jesse Owens and Carl Lewis, and that he intended to become the third. So how does he rate him now, 30 years on? Johnson ranks Lewis 4th on his personal list of the greatest sprinters ever, which is lower than most American fans would place him. Lewis won plenty, but Johnson looks for total dominance in a single event, and in the sprints, Lewis had rivals who beat him. Move the conversation to the long jump runway, though, and Johnson stops hedging completely. He calls Carl Lewis the greatest long jumper who has ever lived, and nobody in the sport argues with him. Number 4, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Thousands of athletes have passed through Johnson's Performance Center outside Dallas over the past 20 years. Very few have earned the label he handed the quiet woman from New Jersey. He called her the ultimate racer, then explained exactly what he meant by it. There is a difference, he said, between the ability to run fast times and the ability to beat people. The best racers beat people every single time they line up. She has done both, over and over again. 6 world records in the 400-meter hurdles. Olympic gold in Tokyo, then Olympic gold again in Paris in 50.37 seconds. A race where she broke her own world record while everyone else was fighting for silver. Then last September, on a rain-soaked track at the Tokyo National Stadium, she walked away from the hurdles completely and ran a flat 400 meters in 47.78. That is the second fastest time in recorded history. No woman had broken 48 seconds in almost 40 years, and she did it in the pouring rain, in an event she had barely raced at that level. Johnson had seen it coming long before the rest of us. She was the very first athlete he signed to his track league, before anyone else on the roster. He said he identified with her because she gets criticized for the exact thing he was criticized for in the 90s, showing no personality on the track because she stays completely locked in until the race is finished. Number 3, Wayde van Niekerk, August 14, 2016. The Olympic Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. Johnson was working as an analyst, watching a 400-meter final stacked with 2 former Olympic champions, Kirani James of Grenada and LaShawn Merritt of the United States. Barely anyone in that stadium was paying attention to lane 8. Johnson's own world record, 43.8 from Seville in 1999, had stood untouched for 17 years. Coaches around the world called it one of the safest marks in the entire sport, the kind of number that outlives the man who set it. Van Niekerk went out so hard from that outside lane that he never saw another runner the whole way round. He crossed the line in 43.03 seconds. Johnson reacted live on air, his voice climbing over the noise of the crowd. From lane 8, a world record, he said, before admitting he had never seen anything like it from 200 to 400 meters. He called the race a massacre. Then came the moment that told you everything about Michael Johnson. Minutes after losing a record he had held for nearly 2 decades, he publicly congratulated the South African and his coach, a 74-year-old great-grandmother named Ans Botha. He said Van Niekerk could become the next global star of the sport once Usain Bolt retired. The following summer, Van Niekerk went to Ostrava and took Johnson's world best in the 300 meters as well. 10 years on from Rio, that 43.03 is still standing, and no other man in history has ever run under 43.10. If you are enjoying this walk through track history, hit subscribe. We cover the sport's biggest stories every single week. Now, the 2 names Johnson puts above everyone else. Number 2, Usain Bolt. Johnson held the 200-meter world record for 12 years. 19.32 seconds in custom gold spikes in front of 83,000 screaming people in Atlanta. He took a third of a second off the old mark in one race, which remains the biggest single improvement the event has ever seen. Then in Beijing in 2008, a 21-year-old Jamaican ran 19:30 and took it away from him. A year later in Berlin, Bolt lowered it again to 19:99 and ran 9.58 seconds in the 100 meters. Both of those numbers are still standing today, almost 2 decades later, and nobody has come close. Johnson has never been shy about where that puts Bolt. He said the Jamaican is simply the best that has ever been. He described the talent as otherworldly, then pointed at something that gets lost behind the world records. Bolt dominated 2 separate events for a decade, across 3 straight Olympic Games, while making the whole thing look effortless. Johnson has said he believes Bolt could have trained lightly, skipped most of the hard work, and still beaten the field on raw ability alone. That does not mean Johnson goes quietly. Back in 2016, he insisted that if the 2 of them had ever lined up in a 200-meter final in their primes, he wins that race every single time, guaranteed. He has softened it a little since then, saying only that he would have risen to whatever the occasion demanded. Bolt heard about the claim and his response was blunt. No way was Michael Johnson beating him. The 2 never did race each other, and they never will. Different generations, different distances, one shared record book. Number 1, Jesse Owens. Here is the twist nobody expects. Johnson never actually saw Jesse Owens compete. Almost nobody alive today did. Owens died in 1980, when Johnson was 12 years old and still years away from finding the 400 meters. Yet when he was asked to rank the greatest athletes of all time, he put Owens first, Bolt second, himself third, and Carl Lewis fourth. The reason sits inside a single afternoon in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in May of 1935. Owens had fallen down a flight of stairs days earlier and could barely bend his back. He still broke 5 world records and equaled a 6th in 45 minutes at the Big Ten Championships. Johnson has described that afternoon as one of the most amazing feats in any sport, and no athlete in any discipline has matched it since. Then came Berlin in 1936. 4 gold medals on a cinder track, in leather shoes, in front of a regime that had built the entire games around proving he could not win. No modern spikes, no sports science, no prize money waiting at the finish line, and a country back home that still would not let him eat in the same restaurants as his white teammates. Johnson has said that what Owens achieved in such a short international career remains unprecedented and unmatched, even today. That is why the man who ran on the fastest surfaces ever built still puts a sprinter from the 1930s at the very top of the sport. So the order runs Owens, Bolt, Johnson himself, then Lewis, with Van Niekerk and McLaughlin-Levrone as the 2 he watched rewrite the record books with his own eyes. Now notice who is missing. No Noah Lyles, no Sha'Carri Richardson. When Johnson posted a similar list of the American athletes who genuinely transcended the sport, both of them were left off it, and the arguments online ran for days. He seemed perfectly happy about that. He has said before that if everybody agreed on these selections, the sport would be boring. So tell us where he got it wrong. Does Bolt deserve the top spot over Owens? Should Sydney be sitting higher than fourth? Drop your own 5 in the comments and subscribe for more stories from the world of track and field.